As Israel attacks Iran, its genocide in Gaza has shown no signs of easing. At least 70 Palestinians were killed in a single day at a food distribution site run by a controversial Israeli-US-backed group in Khan Younis this week. All other aid channels have been blocked, including medical supplies. So what is the impact of this latest Israeli strategy? This is Inside Story. Hello there and welcome to the programme. I'm Nick Clark. As Israel's attacks on Iran unfold, the horrors it unleashes in Gaza continue with vicious ferocity. Tuesday saw the biggest death toll in a single day of people gathering for aid from the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is an Israeli-US scheme which began 3 weeks ago. People desperate for food fired on by Israeli tanks, drones and snipers which surround the operation. The aid process has become a new means to further attack and demoralise Palestinians, starvation luring more people into the line of fire. It's now the only way for any outside help to reach Gaza after months of Israeli blockade. So what's the impact of all this on the people of Gaza? And how much more desperate is the situation becoming? And what's the wider Israeli-US strategy behind this aid operation? We'll get to our guests in just a moment, but first, this report from Barbara and Gilbert.
Palestinians had gathered along the main eastern road in Khan Younis to find food for their families when Israeli troops opened fire. Witnesses say missiles rained down from drones and tanks fired shells at desperate Palestinians seeking food.
This happened because of hunger. We took the flour, then they told us there was another batch. People queued up, and after 8 minutes of waiting, the tank came and shelled us. I hid and saw hands, heads, and limbs.
They told us there is flour in a certain area. We went and waited. Then we found rocket falling on us, missiles falling on us, and the quadcopter falling on us. We are civilians. We don't have weapons or anything. We were going to get food for our children.
It's the worst massacre in a day since the controversial US-Israeli-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation began its operations in Gaza at the end of May. At least 70 Palestinians were killed on Tuesday in the Khan Younis attack. And doctors in Gaza say that number is expected to rise. The UN says more than 330 people have been killed and 2,800 injured while trying to access food near the group's distribution sites.
These fathers, children and mothers who go to get food for their children are killed daily in cold blood and just for the sake of killing. And they are killed daily by the dozens and hundreds are injured.
The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation started operations after nearly 3 months of a total Israeli blockade that stopped food, medicine and fuel supplies reaching the Strip. But its operations have been marked by killings and chaos, with attacks by Israeli snipers and drones on those gathering for aid. International humanitarian organizations and the United Nations have refused to cooperate with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, saying they are best placed to distribute aid.
We have all to be aware that the recent food distribution initiatives by non-UN actors every time result in mass casualty incidents.
Treating the sick and injured has become a desperate challenge for doctors in Gaza, with people dying from normally treatable injuries and conditions.
The severe shortage caused by the occupation by preventing medical supplies and medicines from entering has exacerbated and made it difficult for us to deal with the cases.
The Israeli-US-backed aid operation has brought more death, injury and fear to Palestinians desperate for food. People who've been under relentless Israeli bombardment are now struggling to survive hunger and malnutrition. Barbara and Gilbert for Inside Story.
Well, it's a desperate situation, so let's bring in our guests. In Gaza City, we have Amjad Shawa, who's director of the Palestinian Non-Governmental Organizations Network. In Abu Dhabi, Christopher Lockyear is standing by, Secretary General at Medecins Sans Frontières International, also known as Doctors Without Borders. And in the Norwegian city of Tromsø, Dr. Mads Gilbert, a medical doctor with 30 years' experience in Palestinian healthcare, who remains in close contact with colleagues in Gaza and who's just been in the West Bank. A warm welcome to each of you. Amjad, I'd like to start with you, if I may. We got a sense of it from the report we just saw, but fill in the daily reality for us, if you would. Just lay out how dangerous, how life-threatening it is just to be able to try and find something to eat.
Thank you. It's almost more than 100 days of Israeli total closure of the borders, denial of the entry of the basic needs on the humanitarian level. Almost we have nothing to deliver to the people of Gaza. As a humanitarian, UN, NGOs, national NGOs, our warehouse is empty. So people are now, through this kind of engineered starvation by Israel, we have this so-called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and it's not a humanitarian at all. What we witnessing every day through the daily killing of these numbers of the Palestinians who are moving in the early morning, very early morning hours, to go to these military sites, which is guarded by militants and the Israeli troops. And they are working for 2 hours to reach these sites, which is under the Israeli total control. And these sites, it's in the south area of Gaza Strip. 2 sites in Rafah and 1 site, it's in south of Netzarim. And Netanyahu himself said, they bought these sites in the south in order to force the people of Gaza and North to move to the south to receive aid, and then to have these concentration camps as kind of step forward the issue of Gaza deportation. Every day, we are receiving reports about tens of people killed and injured and insulted. It's kind of fenced sites with gates, with very limited amounts of aid, while people are standing there, thousands. So just open the gates and they create this chaos. The Israelis are shooting towards these people, to the chest, to the heads, and there is no medical points in that area, clinics or wherever. So they have to, sometimes to left behind these injured, bleeding, and in the same time kill people and under the fire. But I have to tell you that for ages, UN system, mainly UNRWA, 75 years of work in Gaza Strip, through its clinics, schools, humanitarian system, and the other UN agencies, with the NGOs, with the national NGOs, we work together through our commitment on the humanitarian principles to deliver services. UNRWA alone has 400 distribution points. We as national NGOs, we also have hundreds.
Mads, it's a daily choice, isn't it, to either risk your life and try and find the food or just starve?
It is a horrible choice, and it's important to remember that this is 100% man-made. We're not talking about a natural disaster. We are talking about what Mr. Shawa precisely described as engineered starvation and a systematic killing of men, women, and children in Gaza that has been going on not only for nearly 20 months, but we need to understand and discuss the root cause. Because if we only concentrate on discussing the humanitarian part of this massively engineered humanitarian crisis, we miss the root cause. And the root cause is the occupation of Palestine, which has been going on for 75 years, combined with Israeli impunity for all the same time, which means that all these atrocities that we who have been working with the Palestinians for decades, we have seen this all the time. The attack on healthcare is nothing new. The Israelis have had that as part of their modus operandi during all the attacks when I've been in Gaza. The attack on UNRWA, on ambulance services, on food supply chains, Don't forget that Gaza has been under siege for 17 years, and there is a widespread malnutrition, anemia, and stunting already resulting from that. This did not start on the 7th of October, and we need to understand, in order to solve this, we have to solve the root cause, because only addressing the humanitarian needs, which are horrendous, will not give us a sustainable solution. So this can be reversed in one day, once Israel is forced to ceasefire and to open Gaza to the thousands of truckloads ready to enter with food, water, and medical supplies.
Amjad talked of the kind of injuries that we're seeing. Let's explore the medical situation a little bit more with Chris Lockyear, who's the Secretary General of Medecins Sans Frontières. And Chris, in this most recent incident, there were reports of shells being fired into the crowd, but there is, as Amjad was saying, there's also daily evidence of direct targeting of individuals by snipers.
Yeah, and I think we've been hearing about how desperate the situation has to be to for people to knowingly go to these distribution sites when they're very aware of the risks that they face. As we've been hearing, there's been dozens and dozens of people injured on a daily basis since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation came into operation. And from our staff there, who are still trying to continue essential medical services, we're seeing it from both angles. We're seeing it from the patients that are coming into the health facilities with their injuries that need treatment, but we're also seeing our staff who themselves are desperate and are desperate to get food, to be able to look after themselves, their families, but also to be able to treat patients. As one of them said just the other day, you go to one of these distribution sites, you may come back with a bag of flour, or you may come back with a shroud.
Indeed, a bullet in the head potentially. And Mads, I guess that's it, isn't it? Presumably it's trauma injuries from mostly bullet wounds that we're seeing from these aid sites in the hospitals such as they are.
Yes, I just had a long conversation with the Deputy Minister of Health, Dr. Youssef Aborish, yesterday in Nasser Hospital, describing the situation in Nasser. And from multiple medical sources, there are two patterns of injury. Those who are killed are shot to the head and the chest. But the Israeli occupation army has picked up their old tactique of shooting to the extremities, which they used widely during the Great March of Return and during the two intifadas, which means that they are hitting the knee joints, the ankles, and the leg bone in order to inflict either amputations or very debilitating injuries, which will last for the whole life. These injured are coming into a Nasser hospital, which is lacking everything, according to Dr. Youssef. Medical consumables, medical equipment, drugs, water, and not at least food for the staff, for the patients, and for their families. So he was telling me yesterday that they don't know how long they can be operative if they don't get access to medical consumables and food. And he also told me that so far, the Minister of Health has recorded 150,000 blood units being delivered since the 7th of October. Now it is impossible to ask for blood donors because the donor population, i.e. the people of Gaza, are so starved that they have all nutritional anemia, and you cannot ask them to give blood, which means that these injuries will bleed to death. And cannot be given blood transfusions to substitute and save their lives.
Amjad, how does what you're seeing and hearing and indeed experiencing tie into what the Israelis say about this, which is, I quote, "The IDF regrets any harm to uninvolved individuals and operates to minimize harm as much as possible to them while maintaining the safety of our troops." What do you make of that?
My reflection, it's today, after the regret, today there is a new number of people killed, about 10 people killed in front of one of these sites in south of Netzarit. So they continue killing and they regret. The issue that there is no accountability till now, real accountability towards this occupation and also towards this GHF, which has become partner of the Israeli occupation on their attacking the Palestinians and misleading the world and the international community regarding that the Israelis are entering aid to Gaza, food. So this is not true. They are suffocating the people, insulting them, killing them, whilst they are using such artificial military way to distribute aid to the Gazans. It's supposed to be dignified, safe sites for the people to go to receive the aid. What we did as a humanitarian, we used to do, we get aid to the people. We don't get people to the aid in such unsafe, unrespectable sites that they did. I do agree with Dr. Matz regarding the roots of the problem, and it's very important to address this issue. But also, when we are addressing starvation, we have to talk about thirst, about the issue of medicine, about the issue of also displacement. 90% of the population of Gaza displaced for 12 to 15 times on time that we have no tents. Also, to address the issue of fuel. I think you received the warning from OCHA today that the UN has nothing to deliver to the hospitals, the water facilities, to the telecommunication regarding the fuel. Gaza is dependent on fuel to operate the live facilities in Gaza, mainly the rest of the hospitals that we have. So if we will not have fuel in 2 days, I cannot imagine the situation regarding the lives of patients and injured, and also the third situation that we will be in. Although that now we are suffering from severe water insecurity, and people became dependent of insecure water resources. So we have a lot of diseases. It's an urgent issue now. We are in very critical situation that Gaza is passing through. Whilst Israel launching this war in Iran, we have this critical humanitarian situation.
Well, and that's the thing. That's the thing, Chris, isn't it? Because while we have the world is focused on the situation in Iran, and Gaza, to a degree, has been forgotten, to quite a large degree, has been forgotten at this moment in time. But coming back to the GHF, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which has been co-opted by the US and Israel to oversee this aid, what's your assessment of what they're doing and what should be happening?
Yeah, well, let's take a step back, and what we've seen throughout the course of this war is repeatedly a real cynical use of the notion of humanitarian assistance and humanitarian aid. We've seen it in the naming of the so-called humanitarian zones that were supposed to be safe zones for people to evacuate to, where people were bombed and injured in those zones. So we've seen the manipulation of the word humanitarian, but we've also seen prior examples of illusions of humanitarian aid. There was the failed attempt at the pier by the American Department of Defense, which also led to catastrophic food distributions. We've seen attempts at airdrops, which have been both dangerous, killing people in some cases, ineffective, with food landing in the sea, and dehumanizing. All of this to create an image, I would argue, that says, well, aid is getting into Gaza and therefore the war can continue. If it is possible to get aid in, then it's possible to continue the war. And what I think we're seeing in the GHS, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is the latest and most dangerous incarnation of that trend. It is a politicized and militarized form of trying to give assistance to people, quite rightly, as was just said, bringing people to distribution sites rather than taking it locally creates a more dangerous distribution in any conflict, but particularly in such a concentrated and charged conflict as this. And it's a real contradiction with the way that we work in terms of giving humanitarian assistance around the world. We work according to a set of principles. We work to those principles of independence, neutrality, and impartiality to be able to give the aid as close as possible to the people who need it most and give the right sort of thing to them, be that food aid, medical aid, shelter, protection. All of this is essential to be able to do so, if not safely, then as safe as possible, and to take that as close to people as we possibly can, to keep it as safe as possible, to also ensure that it's as human and dignified as possible. And what we're seeing in the GHF, in the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, is the opposite of that. We're seeing a manipulated approach to aid, which is, I would argue a cynical way of feigning compliance with international humanitarian law when we know that that's been broken on a daily basis. So it is dangerous to the individuals, dangerous to the community, but also really undermines what it is to be a humanitarian actor in a conflict zone such as what we see in Gaza today. Of course.
Mads, what is it about this horror, this inflicted tragedy by a single nation on a desperate people that just seems to merit only rhetoric from the international community and no kind of any real action at all?
Well, that's a good question, Nick. And I'd like first to just comment on the use of the word conflict, because I don't think this is a conflict. This is an illegal, long-standing occupation in contravention to all international treaties. It was recently judged as illegal by the International Court of Justice, and it should be ended this year. A conflict is an argument between two parties. This is an illegal occupation which is perpetrated by the State of Israel with its colonial, settler system and apartheid state supported by the US. And until we discuss and solve that fundamental issue, all humanitarian aspects of treating or handling the situation will be insufficient, and even more, it might add to the problem and be part of the problem, because it might cover up. I'm not saying that the people of Gaza should not have humanitarian help. Of course they should. But the main solution is, number one, to stop the bombing and have ceasefire. Number two, to open Gaza for humanitarian support, because what's going on is not only an illegal occupation, but it is also an illegal collective punishment, which is not allowed according to international law. And we need to stop only discussing the symptoms in Gaza, and we need to much more profoundly discuss the root cause of all this man-made misery. I mean, when you look at the footage from Gaza now, no director from Hollywood would even think of making a manuscript with these sceneries. It would be doomed as completely unrealistic and obscene. Still, it is the reality for the people of Gaza. And Israel, as Chris said, I mean, they're weaponizing food supply. They're weaponizing humanitarian help. And they do it for two purposes. One, it is to have a legal argument in the International Court of Justice with the ongoing genocide trial, saying that, we did indeed support and supply food. And number two, I think this is the first time in modern history that food is used systematically as a bait to attract the people, give them 20 minutes from the loudspeakers in the drone to fight over these bags of food, and then starting to shoot them as part of the ethnic cleansing and the genocide in Gaza. This is the context we need to understand.
Indeed. And Amjad, that brings me on to what the UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk said on Monday, that Israel was weaponizing food, and he called for a full investigation into the shootings. But as we all know, these investigations rarely come to anything. Briefly, if you would, because we're just running out of time.
You know, that Israel refused any kind of investigation, and they refused this from the early beginning. And whether that there is investigation or not, they will not follow these investigations. But we are talking about unprecedented mechanism to distribute aid, to replace the humanitarian structure by military structure. And this is not only in Gaza. It could have kind of impact, negative impact on all over the world. The international community all over the world has to act against this kind of mechanism, and to get this mechanism accountable as the occupation itself. They are conspirators of the killing of the people, and about 400 people were killed, thousands were injured, insulting the people. So there is supposed to be cases against this company, which is called Asaras, and this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which are working in the same agenda with the occupation against the Palestinian people. And then in the end, that yes, we have this humanitarian impact, but we have to solve the roots of this problem. Otherwise, Israel will repeat it again and again.
OK, Mads, I think you want to come in there.
Yeah, I just want to mention a newly published study in The Lancet, which shows that the life expectancy for the people of Gaza, the good people of Gaza, has dropped during the first 12 months since the 7th of October by 35 years, meaning the life expectancy was 75 years before the 7th of October. After, it has dropped to 35 years, which means that the sum effect of the bombing, the attack on healthcare, the lack of treatment for common diseases, the starvation and the thirst, all these factors come together and they steal half of the life of the good people of Gaza as it is now. That's what we need to address, because without solving the occupation and the starvation and the blockade of Gaza, it will continue to drop. It's already only half of what it was. 35 years lost in life expectancy through the Israeli occupation of Gaza. It's horrendous, never seen in history before.
Chris, last word to you. I'd like you to react to that. And also, do you think in years to come there will be any kind of reckoning about this, a realization of the horrors that are being committed, a bit like the Bosnian War?
Well, I would just add on to the last point that we've done a survey, a very recent survey amongst our own staff, and 40% of the people that they know were killed were under the age of 10 years old. Another Lancet survey has indicated that of babies born since this war has started, over 350 of them have died. But to your question in terms of accountability and in terms of follow on from here, you know, what we and what we're calling for as MSF is, in particular over the last few days, European leaders who have been changing their narrative about the disproportionality and the intolerable death rate, the killing rate that is happening in Gaza. We're saying to them, please put your money now where your mouth is and ensure that your words are followed by actions and accountability. Ensure that weapons that are being transferred to Israel are not being used to kill and maim the children that we are seeing in our hospitals. Ensure that international law is being followed. and ensure that there is accountability for these crimes that are happening at both a collective society level and at an individual level, be they men, women, children, humanitarian workers. We're seeing a complete deficit of accountability. The war needs to stop. It needs to be a massive influx of aid into the Gaza Strip and an ending of the siege. And there needs to be a collective accountability that we have not seen anywhere near the levels that are needed over the last 20 months.
Gentlemen, you've helped frame this desperately important story. We can only hope that some kind of respite is coming. Thank you to you all, Amjad Shawa, Christopher Lockyear and Dr. Mads Gilbert. And thanks to you for watching. You can see the programme again at any time by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, just go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. And you can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. From me, Nick Clark, and the entire team here, it is goodbye for now.